Unit 6. Starting off. Exercise 2. A.
This portrait's one which I started from a photo of myself, actually. But after a time, I came to the conclusion that photos aren't that good when you're trying to be creative. You know, I found myself sort of imitating the photo, and that wasn't very satisfying. So I switched to drawing in front of a mirror instead. Anyway, I like this self-portrait because I think it reveals a bit about me, like that I'm quite neat, for example, perhaps a little unadventurous in the way I dress, not like most artists. But I think I've captured quite a sincere and thoughtful expression on my face. Also, I think I look quite sort of approachable, not at all threatening, someone it's nice to be around. At least I hope so.
B.
You know, I've done quite a few portraits of friends and classmates and so on, normally from photos, and people are usually quite complimentary about them. But you should have heard some of the things my friends said about this one. We never see you concentrating like that. You're not like that at all. You're looking really serious. You see, I did the drawing in front of a mirror as a sort of experiment to see if I could do a self-portrait from life, like Rembrandt or Dali or someone, and I found I kept having to move my head, so my hair kept getting in the way and I got quite frustrated. It took me hours. Still, I'm quite proud of the way my eyes turned out, sort of thoughtful and sincere.
C.
I've been looking at quite a few self-portraits recently because this one didn't turn out at all how I expected. Most artists look like they're really concentrating hard and you don't catch them smiling much. In this one, I look sort of uptight, moody, even a bit aggressive, or perhaps a bit self-conscious. I'd just come back from holiday and my face was pretty tanned. I found it really hard to capture that tanned look combined with my fair hair in a black and white portrait. I'd like to look more relaxed though.
Unit 6. Listening, Part 3. Exercise 3.
I'm delighted to be talking to artist Mike Myatt about his new portrait of actress Emily Curran, soon to be hung in the Bristol City Theatre, and to Emily herself, who's also with us to share her experience. Mike, you didn't paint Emily in your studio, did you?
No, I put the finishing touches to my work in the studio, but I always prefer to paint my subjects in their own surroundings, with their objects and furniture around them. I find because they're on their own territory, so to speak, that they're more self-assured and comfortable, so they pose in a way that's more typical of them. That's what I attempt to capture, the person in their element, physically how they are. I've done a fair number of portraits that way, and it seems to work better.
And Emily, a new experience for you?
Entirely, although as an actress, I'm used to directors and colleagues looking at me and being highly critical of my work, how I move, and paying very, very close attention to my performance. In this case, the attention was extremely intense right from the outset, and even in my own home, it was quite awkward to find a way of sitting that I felt happy with. So in the end, as you can see, I stood. As an actress, I'm quite used to doing so for hours on end, so that was no hardship. And I thought, mistakenly, as it turned out, that I'd be able to daydream my way through the whole process and relax.
Mike, Emily's portrait was commissioned by the Bristol Theatre Society, but speaking more generally, why do people commission portraits of themselves?
There can be any number of reasons. Unlike photos, which are mechanically produced images, portraits are an artist's interpretation of reality, the artist trying to see and present an image of the real person. They really are, visually, trying to tell the truth about that person. And in Emily's case, that's important, because you normally see her in the theatre playing someone else. Speaking more generally, though, if you visit people's homes, you'll often see portraits hanging over the mantelpiece which have been in the family for generations, often with their favourite horse in front of their house, or in the library with their books. And by and large, I'd say people have regarded their portraits as status symbols. Not that I'm suggesting that in Emily's case.
Although I am very proud of it and where it's going to hang.
You don't paint from photographs, do you, Mike?
No, during the painting process, a very personal connection's formed between the painter and the sitter. You watch the shadows pass across their face as you paint, so to speak, and as the hours pass with the changing lights and shades, you see the person in 3 dimensions, as you never would in a photo, and you paint that, so that what you have, I believe, when you're successful, is a closer likeness than you could ever manage from copying a photo.
I'm totally with Mike in his last remark. For me, the whole experience was nothing like what I'd been expecting. It was so much more intense and unsettling. As I said before, I'd been expecting to daydream all day, but Mike painted me standing staring directly at him, and I had to stand still with this very intense, concentrated man's eyes boring into me. Whenever my attention wandered, he'd say, "You're not really looking at me, your mind's elsewhere." And I had to come back to the present. It was harder than any acting job because I had to be myself through the entire process. I felt a huge sense of release when Mike announced he'd finished with me.
So, Mike, do you feel you capture the personality of your sitters?
No doubt I get some intuition about my subjects' personalities as I work with them, though we don't normally talk much because the process of painting takes up all my attention. Critics say that the person's personality comes through in great portraits, but I think that argument's a bit overstated. I feel that if I capture anything, it's my subject's passing moods and emotions. People looking at the portraits later draw their own conclusions about character, and that's how the best art should be, shouldn't it? An interaction between the subject, the artist, and the observer, where each one makes a contribution to something which never has one definitive result, but where each individual takes from it what they see at that moment.
Unit 6. Speaking, Part 3. Exercise 1. Pair A.
Now I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Here are some ways of encouraging young people to spend more time reading, and a question for you to discuss. Talk to each other about how useful each of these experiences might be in encouraging young people to read more for pleasure.
Do you read many books, Ivan?
Not many, to tell you the truth.
Well, I do. I'm studying literature at university, so I read a huge number of books. Not all for my own enjoyment, though I do read some because they give me pleasure as well.
Well, let's look at the task. Yes, I remember when I was at school that we used to read books together in class. You know, the teacher would read a bit, then we would take turns round the class, and then from time to time we'd discuss the book.
Yes, I love doing that. For me, it was the high point of the week. I think that's what made me determined to study literature. That and reading with my mother when I was very small.
I'm not so sure about reading in class. I found it rather, tedious, especially when it was the turn of someone who couldn't read very well. That was sort of painful.
Yes, but I had a teacher who loved books and was able to communicate her enthusiasm, which was fantastic. And she helped us to dig below the surface so we could really understand what the book was all about.
Well, maybe you were luckier with your teacher than I was. I often felt I was just reading out of obligation, something we had to do.
Are you a fan of e-books? I guess not if you don't read much yourself.
Well, actually, I think they might work quite well at getting young people to read more, because kids get more involved if they can interact. I remember books when I was a child where you could choose options, and then you were directed to another page depending on the option. So you were really choosing how the story developed. I like that idea.
Pair B.
Now I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Here are some ways of encouraging young people to spend more time reading, and a question for you to discuss. Talk to each other about how useful each of these experiences might be in encouraging young people to read more for pleasure.
Well, I think reading the book when you've seen the film is really effective because people want to continue the experience or find out more.
Yes, although they're often disappointed by the book or the film. I mean, one is usually much better than the other. Then using e-books, I'm not sure. I think children often get distracted, especially when they're using one of those tablets, and there are lots of other things, games and so on, not connected with the book.
Yes, I agree. Now, reading a book in class, I think this is okay for small children, but do you think it really works with teenagers, for example? I'm not too sure.
Well, maybe if they haven't picked up a reading habit by the time they're teenagers, it's too late.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think library visits on their own are enough, do you? I mean, young people have got to take out a book and do something at the end, like discuss it or write a review.
You're probably right, but I used to hate writing reviews. I think if you do that, you're not encouraging young people to read for pleasure. It sort of becomes just another chore, another piece of homework.
Unit 6. Speaking, Part 3. Exercise 6.
Now you have about a minute to decide which experience you think would be the most successful in encouraging young people to read more.
Well, I think for me, seeing a film of the book would be the most effective because I can think of 2 or 3 books I've read as a result of going to the cinema, so it might well get young people into the habit. Do you agree?
I think you're probably right, perhaps for older children. Although, I'd strongly suggest reading in class as a great way to get kids into reading at a younger age. As long as they have the right sort of teacher to encourage them.
Yes, with young children, it does come down to the quality of the teacher, doesn't it? That's perhaps where I missed out.
Thank you.